ABC's hit series The Good Doctor is finally saying goodbye after 7 phenomenal seasons. With nearly 130 episodes, The Good Doctor has made us laugh and cry so much over the years. The story of Sean Murphy and his journey as a surgeon will endure, but thankfully, we get one final goodbye. Later tonight, fans bid adieu to the popular ABC medical drama The Good Doctor. The farewell season of the beloved series has already had its share of, let's say, memorable moments. There was hope that the world of the TV series would continue with a spin-off, The Good Lawyer, but that never came to fruition. So these final episodes are the last we are getting of these characters and the universe that creator David Shore established. The majority of The Good Doctor Season 7 Episode 10 was so gloomy that I was counting down the minutes until the finish, but the final 5 minutes were all I could have asked for in the season final. That's not the kind of reaction a 7-year-long devoted fan base should have to a series final. Claire's life was in danger in another part of the finale, which focused mostly on Dr. Glassman's refusal to contemplate more therapy for his brain cancer. After devoting the last 3 episodes to Asher's funeral, Sean was desperate to save Glassman, who was determined not to be saved. It appeared as though the show might conclude with a double burial. That was neither therapeutic nor enjoyable. It was harsh and needless. Even after years of excellent health, cancer can return, and when it does, it is devastating. But the goal of yearly scans is to identify resurgences early and treat them before they become life-threatening. Naturally, that isn't always feasible. Nevertheless, it didn't seem likely that Glassman's brain cancer would be fatal given that he had scans recently and showed no symptoms when he was attempting to persuade Sean that he was capable of operating. Furthermore, after Sean had successfully saved Glassman's life the last time he was predicted to have 6 months to live, it was unfair for Glassman to expect Sean to accept that the fight with cancer was finished. This seemed like a cheesy story devised to justify Sean's memorialization of Glassman during the final 5 minutes of the show. It was gloomy and unduly manipulative. By skipping in time from when Glassman informed Sean of his diagnosis to when Glassman passed away, the series may have had the same outcome. The final hour of the story might have been devoted to showing Sean's obsession with crafting the ideal opening for the Neurodiversity Foundation, intercut with flashbacks showing Glassman attempting the experimental cures Sean and Charlie discovered but failing, forcing them to finally say goodbye. The tragic conclusion that occurs when a person declines cancer treatment has become a cliché in television, and in this instance, it was so gloomy that it prolonged the conclusion. Not a good way to make a last impression. It made sense that Glassman would object to medical care that might make him ill or hurt. Though I suppose the end would be agonizing in any case with brain cancer. Sometimes that is the most sensible course of action. Glassman and Sean were both too stubborn. Glassman rejected Sean's refusal to accept his decision, but he also refused to consider the notion that he could benefit from a non-invasive treatment. This is Sean, whose specialty is coming up with novel cures that no one has ever thought of. It wasn't difficult for him to do it again. He had already done it for Glassman once. The ending of House, in which House followed with a dying Wilson, appeared to be a possible rerun of that episode. That was already somewhat gloomy the first time. It was headed in that direction, though, with Sean concluding that the only way to save Claire was to give her the treatment that the FDA would not approve while also giving up his medical license. Glassman's rescue was a welcome surprise, but the sudden change in time afterwards begged the question, did he suffer any repercussions? Not that there would have been much purpose in prosecuting Glassman anyway. He was dying, but the ethics board would likely have had something to say nevertheless. There might have been an issue if someone had thought Sean Murphy was responsible. Rather, we leaped back in time as soon as Glassman finished the process, which was confusing and led me to believe I had missed something. With Glassman's death approaching, Claire's illness gave the impression that the show would conclude with 2 deaths, as if there wasn't already enough sadness in the world. When Audrey Lim and Jared were debating possible treatments, Audrey Lim was adamant about saving Claire's arm, but Jared persuaded her that Claire would survive with just one arm. This provided an intriguing analogy, but it was, excuse the pun, overkill to have an entire hour of Claire's life hanging in the balance while Glassman's was almost over. During an already gloomy climax, there had to be a more fitting way to utilize Antonia Thomas's last guest appearance than for Claire to be sobbing over the time she'd squandered and getting ready to die. She had the ability to persuade Sean to allow Glassman to pass away honorably. It would have been lovely to celebrate her and Sean's connection one final time instead of whatever this was intended to be, as she always had a way of reaching through to him. Charlie Lukatis, a newcomer to the show who was also autistic, irritated Sean a great deal during the first part of the season before being lost in the shuffle. She wasn't even present when the Neurodiversity in Medicine Foundation was unveiled. In the epilogue, her sole responsibility was to help Sean with Claire's care. How could that make any sense? The rivalry between Sean and Charlie ought to have persisted throughout the season, rather than being abruptly dropped, with Sean eventually accepting Charlie as a mentor. That would have completed the circle in the series, with Sean mentoring Charlie after serving as Glassman's resident mentor. It would have been the ideal way to pay tribute to Glassman. Instead, following her first altercation with Sean, Charlie faded into the background. This is where The Good Doctor really went wrong. The strikes earlier in the year created delays for several shows, which may have contributed to the rushed and abbreviated seasons of many of them, which is why The Good Doctor's season finale was so disappointing. Perhaps Tales wouldn't have ended so abruptly to create room for the melancholy finale if the show had 22 episodes to finish things up. Sean's mentoring and Steve's possible autism, Charlie was given less time to properly develop them, which contributed to his short shrift. Similarly, the story may have happened in smaller doses and been less agonizing and irritating if Glassman's diagnosis had been given some breathing room instead of going from diagnosis to certain death in one episode. If the treatment didn't work, Sean might have experienced brief moments of hope before having to come to terms with the fact that there was nothing more that could be done. The way it was done was not as poignant as the story that may have been.